In the city of Kampala, Mr. Mbeel was known as a successful businessman. He lived in a big house with his wife, Lena, and their 2 children Juma and Asha. They had everything they wanted: nice clothes, expensive food, and even a car with a driver. But over time, Mbeel began to notice something that made him sad. His family had changed. Lena cared only about shopping and showing off her gold jewelry. Juma often shouted at the house help and refused to do any simple chores. Asha spent most of her time on her phone, laughing at people who did not dress like her. Mbeel watched all this quietly. He remembered how he had grown up poor in a small village, walking to school without shoes and helping his father in the fields. That hard life had taught him respect, kindness, and hard work. But now, his children were growing without those values. One night, while sitting on the balcony and looking at the city lights, Mbeel made a big decision. He knew that money had made his family blind to real life. He wanted them to understand that wealth was not about money, it was about heart and humility. He planned to teach them a lesson they would never forget. The next morning he sat at the dining table with a serious face. Lena, Juma, and Asha joined him, expecting to talk about a new vacation or a shopping trip. But Mbeel's words were unexpected. "We have lost everything," he said slowly. "The company is gone. The bank has taken our house. We must leave the city and go to my father's village." For a few seconds the room was silent. Then Lena's spoon fell from her hand. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice shaking. "How can that happen? You always said business was good." Juma stood up angrily. "I can't live in a village. There's no Wi-Fi, no TV." Asha began to cry softly. "What about my friends? My phone? My school?" Mbeel looked at them calmly. "This is life. Sometimes things change. We will go to Makondo village tomorrow morning. Pack only what you need." That night the house was filled with noise and complaints. Lena cried and called her friends, but no one could help her. Juma refused to pack his clothes until Mbeel came into his room and helped him quietly. Asha sat on her bed, hugging her teddy bear, feeling scared for the first time in her life. When morning came, their driver took them to the bus station. Mbeel sold the car earlier, saying they could not afford fuel anymore. The children sat quietly on the bus, surrounded by people carrying baskets, chickens, and old bags. The road was long, dusty, and full of bumps. Juma complained that the seat was hard. Lena covered her face with a scarf, embarrassed by the noise and smell around her. But Mbeel looked peaceful, as if returning to a long-lost home. After several hours they reached Makondo village. The air was fresh, the sky wide and blue. Children ran barefoot along the paths, laughing and chasing goats. Old women sat under trees weaving mats. Lena frowned when she saw the small mud house where they would stay. "Is this where we'll live?" she asked weakly. Mbeel nodded. "Yes. This was my father's house." The inside was simple, just 2 rooms, a wooden table, and mats on the floor. There was no electricity, no fridge, and no running water. Asha and Juma looked around with shock. "Where's the bathroom?" Juma asked. Mbeel pointed outside. "There's a small one behind the trees." Lena almost fainted. That evening they ate boiled cassava and beans cooked over a small fire. The food tasted plain to Lena, but Mbeel ate happily. "This," he said with a smile, "is the taste of real life." The children sat quietly, too tired and upset to argue. When night came they lay on mats under a mosquito net. The sound of crickets filled the air. Asha whispered, "Papa, do people really live like this?" Mbeel smiled in the dark. "Yes, my dear. Many do. And they are happy." The next morning, Mbeel woke everyone early. "We must fetch water," he said. Juma groaned. "From where?" Mbeel handed him a yellow jerrycan. "From the stream." Lena tried to refuse, saying it was too early, but Mbeel gently insisted. Together they walked through the narrow path, passing villagers who greeted them kindly. At the stream, Juma tried to fill the jerrycan but slipped into the mud, splashing water everywhere. A group of children laughed, but one boy helped him stand. "Don't worry, brother," the boy said with a grin. "You'll learn." Juma blushed but thanked him. For the first time he felt the warmth of simple kindness. Back home, Lena tried to cook breakfast but burned the porridge. Smoke filled the small hut and Asha coughed while laughing. Lena almost cried, but a neighbor named Mama Tayo came and showed her how to control the fire. Lena thanked her, surprised by her gentle smile and patience. Over the next few days life became a little easier. The family woke early to work in the fields. Asha learned how to wash clothes by hand and help with cooking. Juma followed the village boys to the river, where they fished and played football on dusty ground. Lena started talking with other women in the market, sharing jokes and stories. Slowly, the anger and shame in their hearts began to fade. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, the family sat outside watching the sky turn orange. "It's beautiful," Asha said softly. Juma nodded. "It feels peaceful here." Lena looked at her husband with a small smile. "Maybe this life isn't so bad." Beale said nothing, but his heart was full of quiet joy. That night, as the stars shone above, Beale looked at his sleeping children and whispered, "Now they are learning." He knew that the lesson had just begun. Life in Macondo village was nothing like the city. The first morning after arriving, the air felt cooler, the smell of wet soil filled the air, and roosters crowed loudly outside. Lena woke up and looked around the small mud house. The walls were rough and sunlight came through small holes in the roof. She missed her soft bed, the warm shower, and the sound of the city. But all she had now was a mat and a small clay stove. Juma and Asha were still half asleep when their father, Beale, called out, "Wake up! It's time to fetch water." They looked at him with sleepy eyes. "But Papa," Juma complained, "why can't we just turn on the tap?" Beale smiled. "There are no taps here. The stream is the only way." The children followed him through narrow paths, their feet touching the cool earth. The villagers greeted them kindly. "Welcome, city family," said an old woman carrying a pot on her head. Asha tried to smile, but she felt shy. When they reached the stream, Juma frowned. "We have to carry water in these cans?" he asked, looking at the yellow jerrycans. "Yes," said Mbil, "and be careful not to spill." Juma tried to lift the heavy can but slipped on the wet ground, splashing water on his clothes. A group of village children laughed, but one boy helped him up. "You'll get used to it," the boy said cheerfully. Juma gave a small smile. It was the first time someone his age had spoken to him kindly since leaving the city. Back home, Lena was trying to light a fire under 3 stones. She coughed as the smoke rose into her face. "How do people do this every day?" she muttered. A neighbor, Mama Teo, came over with a big smile. "Let me help, sister," she said. She showed Lena how to arrange dry sticks and blow gently to keep the flame alive. Soon the fire was burning. Lena felt thankful, though a little embarrassed. By afternoon, the children were hungry. Lena served them boiled cassava with beans. Juma frowned at the food. "Is this all?" he asked. "No rice? No chicken?" Mbil looked at him and said calmly, "Be thankful, my son. The land gives what we need." Asha took a small bite and whispered, "It's not so bad." The days passed slowly. The sun was hot and the nights were cold. Mbil worked in the fields, planting maize with the other men. He used a hoe instead of a machine and sweat ran down his face. But he was happy. The soil under his hands reminded him of his youth, when he had worked beside his own father. Lena started helping women at the village well. They laughed and told stories as they filled their pots with water. Though she missed her perfume and clean clothes, she began to enjoy their company. One woman said, "City people are not used to this life, but you are learning fast." Lena smiled for the first time in days. Juma made new friends among the village boys. They played football on the dusty ground using a ball made of old plastic bags tied with rope. At first he thought it was silly, but soon he laughed and ran with them, forgetting his city shoes and phone. He felt free. Asha helped Mama Teo collect vegetables from the garden. The older woman taught her how to tell when maize was ready to harvest and how to cook with herbs from the bush. "The earth is our mother," Mama Teo told her. "If you take care of her, she will feed you." Asha nodded and listened carefully. At night they all sat outside under the stars. The sky in the village was darker but full of bright lights from above. "I've never seen stars like this before," Asha said softly. "In the city we only see buildings." Juma pointed at the sky. "That one looks like a bird." They laughed and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. But not every day was easy. One morning heavy rain started. The roof leaked and water dripped on their sleeping mats. Lena tried to move things around but everything got wet. "This is too much," she said, close to tears. "I can't live like this." Beale placed his hand on her shoulder. "It's only a storm. It will pass." After the rain stopped, the sun came out and the villagers helped repair the roof. A man named Cato climbed up and fixed it using dry grass and mud. "We always help each other here," he said proudly. Lena looked at him with gratitude. She had never seen such kindness from strangers. Slowly her heart began to change. She started to understand why her husband had brought them there. Life was simple but it had meaning. People shared what they had and smiled easily. There was no rush, no competition, no greed. One evening while cooking, Lena heard laughter from outside. She stepped out and saw Juma and Asha chasing chickens, their faces full of joy. "Be careful," she shouted, but she laughed too. Beale joined them, carrying a basket of fresh maize. They sat together, roasting corn on the fire. The smell filled the air and everyone ate happily. As the fire burned low, Beale looked at his family. They were tired but smiling. "You are doing well," he said softly. "The land is teaching us." Lena nodded. "It's hard," she admitted, "but I feel different. I don't know how to explain." Juma looked at his father. "Papa, do you miss the city?" Beale thought for a moment. "Sometimes. But here I feel alive." Asha added, "I like it here. Everyone helps each other." That night, as they went to sleep, the sounds of crickets filled the air again. Lena lay awake for a while, thinking about how much they had changed in only a few weeks. The woman who once refused to touch soil now worked with her hands. Her children, who once complained about everything, now laughed freely. Beale watched them and smiled in the dark. His plan was working. The family was slowly learning that happiness did not come from big houses or fancy clothes. It came from living simply, working hard, and being thankful for what they had. The quiet village of Macondo had begun to change their hearts. Days passed quickly in Macondo village, and life began to feel different for the Beale family. The city worries that once filled their hearts were slowly replaced by the rhythm of the village, the sound of chickens in the morning, the laughter of children in the fields, and the smell of fresh food cooking on open fires. Juma woke up early one morning to help an old farmer named Baba Muda. The man had a small piece of land filled with maize and groundnuts. Juma had never worked in a field before, and the first time he tried to dig, he got blisters on his hands. Baba Muda laughed kindly. "Use your body, not your anger," he said. "The land listens to patience." Juma smiled, though tired, and tried again. Day by day the old man taught him how to plant seeds, how to water them, and how to care for the soil. Juma began to enjoy it. He started asking questions about farming and the seasons. When the first small maize shoots began to appear, he felt proud. "You see," Baba Muda said with a grin. "The land always gives back when you respect it." Meanwhile, Asha was spending her mornings at the village well. The women there were strong and cheerful. They carried heavy pots of water on their heads, talking and laughing as if it were nothing. At first, Asha could hardly balance a small pot without spilling it. The women teased her gently. "You walk like a city bird," they laughed. Asha laughed too, and she kept trying. After a week, she could walk home without dropping a single drop. She began to enjoy being part of their group. The women taught her how to wash clothes at the river and how to pound millet with rhythm and song. "Life is lighter when you work with music," one woman told her. Asha began humming as she worked, her voice mixing with the sounds of the village. Lena, who once cried about smoke and dust, also began to change. She had become close friends with Mama Teo, the neighbor who had first helped her with firewood. The two women often cooked together, talking about their children and sharing stories. One afternoon, as they sat under a tree, Mama Teo said, "In the city you have money. But here we have time. We live slowly and enjoy the small things." Lena nodded quietly. For the first time, she understood the meaning of those words. Beale watched all of this from a distance. He did not say much, but his heart was full of pride. His plan was working better than he had hoped. His children had learned to respect others, and his wife was no longer ashamed of simple living. He knew that the village had become their teacher, patient, kind, and full of hidden lessons. One morning, the family joined the villagers to help build a new classroom for the local school. Men carried wood and bricks, women cooked food for everyone, and children fetched water. Juma carried bricks with the other boys, laughing as he raced them to see who could finish faster. Asha helped paint the classroom walls white, her hands covered in splashes of color. Lena stirred a large pot of porridge, her face glowing with sweat and joy. At lunch, everyone sat together under the shade of a big tree. Beale looked around and felt something warm inside. There were no rich or poor people here, only a community working as one. This, he thought, is what life should be. That evening, after the work was done, the villagers sang songs around a fire. The drums beat softly and the air was full of laughter. Asha clapped along while Juma tried to learn the dance steps from the boys. Lena smiled and joined in the singing. Even Beale, usually quiet, tapped his foot to the rhythm. For the first time in a long time, they were not thinking about what they had lost, only what they had found. The next few weeks brought more change. Juma helped Baba Muda harvest vegetables and learned to sell them at the small village market. He began to understand the value of every coin earned from hard work. Asha started teaching small children how to read and write under the mango tree. The children called her Teacher Asha and brought her flowers. She felt proud and useful. Lena began growing vegetables behind their hut. She learned how to use ash and banana peels to make the soil rich. When her first small tomatoes grew, she showed them to Mbil like a child showing a treasure. "Look," she said happily. "I made these grow." Mbil smiled and said, "The land has accepted you." One evening a storm came suddenly. The wind blew hard and rain poured down in thick sheets. Everyone ran to cover their things. Mbil helped the neighbors tie their roofs while Juma and Asha held the door shut against the wind. When the rain finally stopped, they found the yard full of water, but no one complained. The villagers came out, laughing and checking on each other. "The sky was angry," said one man, "but we are safe." The next morning, Mbil's family joined the others to help clean up. Lena brought tea for the women, Juma helped clear fallen branches, and Asha comforted small children who were scared. As they worked together, Lena realized something. Even when problems came, the people of Macondo stood as one. They shared every burden. Later that evening, when the stars came out, Mbil and his family sat outside. The air was cool and the smell of rain still hung in the air. "You have all changed," Mbil said softly. "Do you see it?" Juma nodded. "Yes, Papa. The people here are strong. They don't have much, but they are happy." Asha added, "They don't complain. They just help each other." Lena smiled. "I used to think we were the lucky ones in the city," she said. "But maybe the lucky ones are here." Mbil looked up at the stars. "Maybe luck is not in money," he said. "Maybe it's in peace." That night, before sleeping, Asha wrote a small note in her notebook. "Happiness grows where kindness lives." She placed it beside her bed and closed her eyes, listening to the sounds of frogs near the stream. In that quiet village, under a wide sky, the Mbil family had begun to find something they never had in the city: peace, purpose, and the beauty of a simple life. The sun had grown hotter than ever in Macondo village. The rains had stopped and the sky stayed empty and blue for many weeks. The earth cracked, the river turned shallow, and dust blew across the fields. The green farms that once waved with maize now stood dry and brown. Everyone in the village began to worry. Mbil woke up one morning and saw that his small garden had withered. The leaves hung limp and the soil was dry like ashes. He bent down, touched the ground, and sighed. "The land is thirsty," he whispered. Lena came out of the hut and looked around. "We still have some maize," she said softly. "But others may have nothing." Mbil nodded. "Then we must share what we have." In the following days the drought became worse. The stream where Asha fetched water had become thin and slow. She now had to walk farther to find clean water. Her hands became rough and her feet ached, but she did not complain. She remembered how Mama Teo had once told her, "When you help others, the sky remembers." The villagers tried to save what little they had. They cooked only once a day and used dry leaves for fire. The air was full of dust and the sound of children playing had grown quiet. Yet, in the middle of that silence, the Mbil family stayed strong. One afternoon, Juma noticed some hungry children sitting under a tree. Their faces looked tired and their eyes were dull. He ran home and said to his mother, "Mama, they haven't eaten anything." Lena looked at the small bag of maize they had left. It was not much, but she smiled. "We can spare a little," she said. She poured some maize into a pot and began to cook porridge. The smell spread through the air and soon a few children came closer. Lena handed them small bowls of hot porridge. "Eat slowly," she said kindly. The children smiled, their eyes brightening with joy. When Juma saw that, something moved in his heart. He decided to share more. That evening he went to Baba Muta's house and helped him dig a small well near the field. "If we dig deep," Baba Muta said, "maybe the earth will give us a little water." It was hard work, but they kept trying. Asha joined them too, carrying buckets and fetching water from far away. She filled small pots for the old women who could not walk long distances. The villagers began to notice how much the Mbil family was helping. "Those city people," said one old man, "they have hearts like gold." "Yes," another woman added, "they did not run away when life became hard. They stayed and helped." One evening the whole family sat outside after a long day. The air was warm and dry, but the moon was bright. Lena stirred a small pot of beans while Mbil mended a broken hoe. "Papa," Asha said softly, "why is this happening? Why doesn't it rain?" Mbil looked up at the sky. "Sometimes," he said, "the land tests us just like life does. But even in dry times, kindness is like rain." Lena smiled at his words. "Then we will be the rain," she said. "We will not let our hearts become dry." The next day, Asha and Juma went around the village helping people carry water from the far spring. They walked for hours, their clothes dusty and their feet tired, but they did not stop. When they came back home, Lena gave them cool water and smiled proudly. "You are both growing stronger," she said. "Not just in your hands but in your hearts." A few days later, Mbil heard that one family nearby had no food left. He gathered what remained of their maize and carried it on his back to their hut. The man of that family tried to refuse, saying, "You also need this, brother." But Mbil placed the bag in his hands and said, "The land will provide again. For now let us share." That night, the village gathered at the open ground. The elders thanked Mbil and his family for their kindness. "You came here as strangers," one elder said, "but now you are one of us." The people clapped and sang softly under the dry sky. Days turned into weeks and still the rain did not come. The villagers grew weaker, but they held on to hope. One morning Asha woke up to a strange sound, the sound of wind. She ran outside and felt something cool touch her skin. It was a drop of water. Then another. "Rain," she shouted. "It's raining." The whole family ran outside. The sky had turned gray and soon heavy rain poured down. The dry earth drank it eagerly, the trees shook with joy and laughter filled the air. The villagers came out, dancing barefoot in the mud. Lena lifted her hands to the sky, tears mixing with the rain. "Thank you," she whispered. Mbil looked at his children, soaked and laughing, and felt a deep peace in his heart. The drought had been hard, but it had also shown him something beautiful, his family's true strength and kindness. When the rain finally stopped, the village smelled fresh again. Green shoots began to appear in the fields and life slowly returned to normal. The villagers still remembered how Mbil's family had helped when things were hardest. Whenever people passed their hut, they greeted them with smiles. "The city people have good hearts," they would say. Mbil often sat outside in the evenings, watching the sunset over the wet fields. Juma would sit beside him, talking about planting new crops. Asha would hum songs she had learned from the women at the well. Lena would bring food for everyone, her face calm and happy. One evening, Juma looked at his father and said, "Papa, when we first came here, I wanted to go back to the city. But now, I don't want to leave." Mbil smiled. "That is because you have found something the city could never give you," he said. "You have found the joy of helping others." Asha nodded. "When I see people smile after we help them, I feel rich inside." Lena added softly, "Maybe this is what real wealth means." The night grew quiet and stars filled the sky. The air was cool and gentle after the long drought. Mbil looked around at his family and the glowing fields beyond and whispered, "Even in hard times, goodness keeps the heart alive." In Makondo village, the people never forgot the kindness of Mbil's family. They often said that when the drought came, it did not break the hearts of the people, it brought them together. And among them, the family who had once come from the city had become a part of their story forever. The sky over Makondo turned bright and calm after many months of heat and struggle. The rain finally came, falling softly on the dry earth. Children ran out to dance, and women lifted their faces toward the sky, laughing and crying with joy. The smell of wet soil filled the air and everyone thanked God for mercy. Mr. Mbil stood by the window of the small mud house, watching the rain and thinking deeply. His plan had worked better than he imagined. His family had changed. That evening he called his wife and children to sit with him. The fire crackled in the middle of the room. Lena sat quietly, her hands folded, and Juma and Asha looked at their father with calm, tired eyes. They were no longer the proud and spoiled children who once lived in the city. Their faces showed strength and kindness now. "My family," Mbil began softly, "you have lived here for months. You have worked, shared, and learned. I am proud of you." Lena smiled weakly. "We have learned a lot, Mbil. The people here have big hearts, even when they have little." Mbil nodded, then looked into the fire. His voice grew serious. "There is something I must tell you," he said. "I did not lose our money. We are not poor." There was silence. The rain tapped gently on the roof. Juma's eyes widened. Asha blinked, confused. Lena's mouth fell open slightly, unsure if she had heard correctly. "What do you mean, Papa?" Juma asked slowly. "I mean," Mbil continued, "that everything we owned, the house, the cars, the company, still belongs to us. I only wanted to teach you what life is without comfort. I wanted you to understand the value of kindness, work, and love." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Asha whispered, "So, you lied." Mbil looked at her and said gently, "I told a story that saved our family. You were forgetting who you were. You were becoming lost in money and pride. I had to bring you here to find your hearts again." Tears filled Lena's eyes. She remembered how she had once refused to cook, how she had looked down on the villagers. Now she felt ashamed of her old self. "You were right," she said softly. I had forgotten what matters. The people here, they have nothing, yet they share everything. We had everything, yet we shared nothing. Juma lowered his head. Father, he said, I complained so much when we came here. I hated the farm, the work, the heat. But now I understand. I was lazy. I was proud. I see now how good it feels to help others. Asha nodded. I used to think I was better than the village girls. But now they are my friends. They taught me how to laugh even when life is hard. Beale smiled, his heart full of pride. Then my lesson is complete, he said. Now we can go home. The next morning, word spread through the village that Beale and his family were leaving. The villagers gathered to say goodbye. Old Mama Nala hugged Lena tightly. You came as strangers, but you leave as family, she said. The old farmer, Cato, clapped Juma on the back. You are a strong boy now. Remember the land. It teaches you everything. Children ran around Asha, singing and laughing. Don't forget us, they shouted. Asha smiled and promised she would return. When the family loaded their few belongings onto the old truck, everyone waved and wished them blessings. The rain had stopped and a rainbow stretched across the sky. It felt like a sign, a promise of new beginnings. As they drove back to Kampala, silence filled the car, but it was a peaceful silence. Lena looked out of the window and said, I never thought I would miss the village. Beale smiled. That is because it changed you. Juma spoke from the back seat. Father, when we get back, can we visit Macondo again? Maybe bring food and clothes for the people? Asha added, and help them fix the school roof. The teacher said it leaks when it rains. Beale's heart swelled with joy. Yes, he said. We will go back often. We will not forget the people who gave us back our hearts. When they reached the city, their big house looked strange, too quiet, too clean, too big. But they were not the same people who had left it. Lena no longer cared about fancy parties. She started a small kitchen to feed poor families every weekend. Juma helped the gardener and treated workers with respect. Asha began collecting clothes for children in the villages. And Beale, though he still ran his company, spent his weekends teaching young people about humility and hard work. Months later, they returned to Macondo with gifts for the villagers. When the people saw them, they shouted with joy. The children ran to greet Asha, and the old farmer hugged Juma proudly. Lena helped the women prepare food, and Beale stood under the same tree where he once decided to test his family. He watched them laugh and share with the villagers. His eyes softened and he whispered to himself, now they are rich, not with money but with love. That night, as they sat around a big fire, Beale told the truth to the villagers. I came here pretending to be poor, he said, but I left richer than ever before, because of your kindness. The people clapped and cheered. One man said loudly, you came poor but you made our hearts rich. Everyone laughed and nodded. Under the clear stars of Macondo, the Beale family sat together, smiling, knowing they would never forget what the village had given them, a new way to see the world.